Hey guys, welcome to another car review episode, and this week we have yet another 5-passenger mid-size crossover SUV for you to consider. Yes, I know, it is the most popular segment in the entire automotive market. Everyone and their mothers are practically driving them, and as a result, they're not exactly the most exciting cars to own. But despite the fact, they still make a whole lot of sense. Hear me out. You know what? I get it. Times are tough, and they're not what it used to be back in the days where we're going to afford big houses with multi-car garage with enough spare change that we could save up to eventually buy that sports car that we all dreamed of back when we were kids. Unfortunately, in today's terms, you'd be lucky enough to afford rent, especially here in Vancouver, British Columbia. So, the midsize crossover SUV makes a whole lot of sense. It's a perfect do-it-all car that offers plenty of practicality, they're fairly fuel efficient, and they look pretty trendy and sporty as well. However, one of the biggest gripes I have with midsize crossover SUVs is they tend to be so numb and boring and sedated to drive. Fortunately, Alfa Romeo has a fix to this with a Stelvio that promises to give you back that lost and loving, fun and engaging driving experience to bring that feeling back in the hands of us road car enthusiasts. There are certainly a lot of interesting and important engineering features to make this all happen, as well as some really unique design elements and aesthetics to separate its looks from the crowds and the norms of the Japanese, domestic, and German car makers. We'll go over a lot more in details, but for now, let's go over some of the specs, trims, and pricing. Base models come priced at $48,170 with the highest Estrema trim under test at $60,920 on standard engine configuration. So yes, it is a pretty big price gap between the base Sprint and Estrema trim, but you do get a host of added luxury, performance, and driver assistance features, which we'll talk more about in a bit. Available also at the upper end of the spectrum is a Quadrifoglio trim that comes with an insane twin turbocharged V6 engine that pushes out a whopping 505 horsepower. All models except the Quadrifoglio trim comes with a turbocharged inline 4-cylinder engine with an 8-speed automatic transmission. US buyers have the option to go for rear-wheel drive, while Canadian buyers are limited to all-wheel drive. The powertrain will produce 280 horsepower and 306 pound-feet of torque with fuel economy rating at 22 and 29 miles per gallon on both city and highway driving. So you can expect around 25 to 26 miles per gallon on mixed driving, which isn't great in terms of fuel efficiency, but that will have to be made up for with the added driving performance that Alfa Romeo Stelvio has to offer. Other unique features about the Alfa Romeo Stelvio is it's got a carbon fiber drive shaft, which will also improve overall powertrain performance. Our Estrema model under test does cost an additional $12,750, which is quite a bit of extra change. But what you do get with that are larger 21-inch wheels, advanced driver assistance features that includes lane keeping assist and active blind spot monitoring, a panoramic sunroof, carbon fiber accents, a limited slip differential, and adaptive damping suspensions. The latter limited slip differential and adaptive damping suspensions is really where the upgrades makes its money's worth, which we'll also talk about more later on. So this all sounds good on paper, but what does this all actually mean? Well, first of all, it is an Alfa Romeo. Alfa Romeo has a rich history in building high-performance sports cars with a pedigree in motorsport engineering. As a matter of fact, Alfa Romeo has competed in the Formula One championships at one point in time. Alfa Romeo is also Italian, and they're known for their distinctive styling. Take, for example, this satanic black 20-inch wheel patterns, as well as this evil-looking LED headlamps, which I absolutely love. And of course, you've got this signature inverted triangular front grille pattern that establishes that identity to tell you, hey, I am an Alfa Romeo. Performance and driver engagement remains a top priority of the Alfa Romeo Stelvio, and to make this all happen lies underneath this hood. It's got a turbocharged inline 4-cylinder engine that produces 280 horsepower and 306 pound-feet of torque. So no, it's not a lot on paper, but you do get an awesome ZF 8-speed transmission. Now, North American models come standard with the Q4 all-wheel drive system that's going to give you more stability and traction, especially in slippery and wet conditions. However, US buyers can get a rear-wheel drive model that will give you more sportier and crisper and more naked driver road feel. However, the Q4 all-wheel drive system should still be considered because it's got a unique carbon fiber drive shaft that's not only lighter but stiffer as well to give you more responsive power delivery to the rear wheels. Now, speaking of rear wheels, all models also come equipped with a limited slip differential to improve overall handling and quartering performance. Now let's talk about suspension setup. One of the biggest challenges car makers face is they can either tune them to be softer to provide more comfort or stiffer to provide better handling performance.
You can't really have both unless you have what's called adaptive suspensions that are available in the Estrema model that we have here. How it works is that it's got a series of valves that dynamically controls the damping of each suspension hundreds of times a second to give you the best balance between performance and comfort. It does cost more, but it's a worthwhile option to consider, especially if you want this to be a keeper for long term. Now, the Alfa Romeo Stelvio also comes with Brembo disc brakes to give you optimal stopping power across all models, which is a really nice upgrade to have. I absolutely love this interior. I mean, yes, it is all homogeneously black, but there's still some really distinctive styling features. First of all, this is the Estrema model, so it's got some carbon fiber accents, take for example, on this door panel, as well as on the dashboard and on the center console, which looks really, really good. Now, of course, Alfa Romeo is Italian, and it also follows some exotic sports car design philosophy. Take, for example, these massive aluminum style paddle shifters, which look absolutely amazing and it feels incredible when you're actually using them. You've also got an integrated engine start-stop button located right on the steering wheel, and you've also got these kind of Lamborghini fast fonts on the instrument cluster. Speaking of which, you've got two analog gauges for your tachometer and speedometer, as well as an all-digital display in the middle that tells you everything about your trip information, and you can also switch between different menus to give you a G-force meter or a dedicated digital speedometer. And the steering wheel feels really good. It's kind of a smaller size diameter that really gives you a very authoritative driving ergonomics. And the top part where the thumb touches is also perforated, which feels really, really nice. And overall, the craftsmanship and quality feels really solid, and overall just looks and touch and feels really, really good. Now on the center console, you've got a few different things going on here. You've got your media knob here that allows you to control the volume and different tracks on the infotainment system, as well as a dedicated push rotary knob here to switch between different menus on the media display. Up here, you've got your drive mode selector, which Alfa Romeo calls a DNA. D stands for dynamic, N for normal, and A for advanced fuel efficiency. Depending on the mode you're in, it'll automatically adjust the steering and throttle response, as well as the adaptive suspension setups if you have the Estrema model with the adaptive suspensions. And of course, you've got a simple gear lever here that's similar to the BMW iDrive if you've ever used it. And up here, you've got two cup holders as well as a USB charge port to connect your smartphone to connect to the infotainment system using Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. You've also got a dedicated climate control system. There's also dual climate controls, which is really nice and provides very good tactile feedback, especially with the buttons. Feels pretty solid overall. And of course, up here, you've got a really simple 8.8-inch infotainment system. Overall, I really like the UI UX design. They've done a really good job, especially with the graphics. And it's relatively easy to use, despite the fact that it is a relatively smaller screen compared to some of its competitors, but it still gets the job done pretty well. Speaking of these seats, I really like these seats as well. They're really one of my favorites. Yes, they are bucket seats with a ton of lateral support to keep you in place, especially when you're cornering. This car does have quite a bit of cornering capability, so these lateral supports really do help you keep in place. Now, I am about 5'6", and these seats don't feel too tight. However, if you are a larger adult, this might actually be a concern. Nevertheless, I really love the design, especially with these perforated retro style seats. And these seats are 12-way adjustable, but it's really the styling features. I really like this kind of retro styling of these seats, and they just look really incredible. Now, all is not perfect, and if there's any gripes or pet peeves I would have, it would probably be the infotainment display. It's not so much about the size. Size doesn't really matter to me, but it really is the performance and responsiveness. I really like the overall graphics and UI UX design, but just the overall responsiveness of the software is just not really up to par. There are better performing hardware infotainment systems out there, and unfortunately, that's kind of where it's really lacking, is the hardware behind this infotainment system. And it's also using TomTom GPS, which is not really the best navigation software. However, if you do have Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, at least you can use Google Maps as a substitute. Overall, again, the craftsmanship and the overall looks and feels is really, really good. And I can't really stress enough how amazing these aluminum paddle shifters feel, and they definitely really feel nice to the touch, especially when you're shifting up and down while you're driving. And if you're a music lover, you're in luck because this model comes with a Harman Kardon audio sound system, which sounds pretty good, especially with the interior cabin. It's really well insulated and the music really is very crisp and clear as well. Alright, so we're in the rear seats right now and I'm actually surprised because I have a pretty good amount of leg and headroom as well. I'm definitely not complaining in terms of not enough room. So overall, it feels pretty comfortable and I still really like the overall comfort of these seats. It actually, feels pretty good actually. I'm not complaining at all. Down here, you've also got a pretty standard armrest with 2 dedicated cup holders. And as well as you've got 2 lights that you can adjust here for added lighting, and as well as a panoramic sunroof that really helps bring a lot of natural sunlight into the cabin space, which also helps a lot, especially when the cabin space is all black. You've also got your dedicated heat vents here, and you also got USB charge ports, 2 USB charge ports. And what's unique about the Alfa Romeo Stelvio, especially with the trim that we have here, is that the rear seats can also be heated, which is pretty cool. And overall, it's not bad. I'm a 5'6" inch adult here, and I have plenty of room here. I'm definitely not complaining, and I still have a lot of headroom. So even if you're a larger passenger, I don't foresee that you would struggle too much on the rear seat capacity. And of course, these seats are 60/40 folding, so there are some levers in the back trunk that you can just pull to fold down these rear seats if you need an extra bit of cargo space.
On the regular drive, both acceleration and ride comfort is exceptionally smooth. The overall cabin is well insulated from any unwanted road shear noise, and the overall ride quality rightfully places the Alfa Romeo Stelvio in the luxury class. Very nice. I mean, yes, it's only got 280 horsepower, but it's still very quick and eager to accelerate with little hesitation. And the shifts from this awesome ZF 8-speed transmission with these massive aluminum paddle shifters really adds another layer of road excitement. There is a slight bit of turbo lag on the bottom end, but once you bring the engine up to its happy near red levels, that is when the Alfa Romeo Stelvio really comes alive. Of course, one of the best features of the Alfa Romeo Stelvio, especially our Estrema trim, are the adaptive damping suspensions that deliver ultra-sharp handling and cornering. The steering is exceptionally nimble, precise, and accurate, opening up to loads of joy for us road enthusiasts. Although these bucket seats have massive lateral support, they still feel very snug and comfortable as if you're in a safe and secure kangaroo pouch, especially during high lateral G-forces. And I really like the texture and overall looks and feel of the cabin interior, especially this small and authoritative steering wheel and a fast theme style instrument cluster. I do however wish there was a heads-up speedometer display so I could focus more on the road to meet the demands and capability of this amazing powertrain. If there's anything I want to complain about, I'd probably say the engine tone does sound and feel a bit numb. The Alfa Romeo Stelvio is so much more capable and deserving of more power, and I want to feel the engine shiver at the wheel, a DNA trait of BMW that has been difficult to replicate for years. And unfortunately, if you want more power, you have to make a huge jump to the Quadrifoglio trim with a twin turbocharged V6 pushing out a whopping 505 horsepower, which is just too much for most people. Yes, Alfa Romeo isn't the most established brand on the road today, but from our test drive, the Stelvio deserves accolade for its excellent mishmash of practicality, comfort, and road performance. A very difficult feat to please all, but the Alfa Romeo does it and does it exceptionally well.
Alright, so what's my final take on the Alfa Romeo Stelvio? Let's start off with the styling. I really love the styling. I mean, yes, it is a mid-size crossover SUV and it's not really so much you can do to it, but Alfa Romeo went ahead and instilled some really unique styling features anyways. Take, for example, these satanic wheel design pattern and these really unique LED headlamps, which I really like. Of course, you've got this unique inverted triangular front grille pattern here, and on the back you've got this massive diffuser that not only helps with aerodynamics, but looks really sporty and cool as well. So I'm going to give the overall styling a 4.5 out of 5. Moving on to the interior, it's got some really high quality craftsmanship going on. It definitely looks and feels really good, and it's also got some really unique Italian design features as well. Take, for example, those massive aluminum paddle shifters and the integrated engine start-stop button, and the overall cabin space was really well constructed with excellent installation as well. So I'm going to give the overall cabin space a 4.5 out of 5. Moving on to the electronics, I mean, yes, the infotainment system does look pretty good with really good graphics and a good UI UX overall design. It was also pretty intuitive as well, but the hardware just couldn't keep up in terms of responsiveness. So I'm going to give the overall hardware and electronics performance a 3.5 out of 5. Moving on to the powertrain, I mean, yes, it does have a turbocharged inline 4-cylinder engine, but it only produces 280 horsepower, which is not a whole lot. I really think the Alfa Romeo Stelvio does deserve a whole lot more, and unfortunately, if you do want more power, you need to opt for the V6 engine. Still, nevertheless, the adaptive suspension and the overall feel of the car just felt absolutely amazing. It's certainly one of the most fun and engaging cars that I've really driven in a while, and that's really one of the high points of the Alfa Romeo Stelvio. So I'm going to give the overall powertrain a 4 out of 5. Finally, moving on to drive performance. I mean, yes, again, the acceleration does feel a little bit sluggish with some turbo lag introduced. I really wish it had a more advanced twin-scroll turbocharger like the BMW vehicles has, which has a much more progressive and linear power delivery. But nevertheless, the Alfa Romeo Stelvio had an amazing road handling performance. Definitely one of the most fun and engaging midsize crossover SUV or even any car that I've driven in a long time. And the adaptive suspensions does a really phenomenal job in giving the best of both worlds between comfort and road performance. So I'm going to give the overall drive performance a 4 out of 5. Well, that's my final take on the Alfa Romeo Stelvio. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below and I'll try to answer them as best as I can. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe. And as always, keep driving, and until next time.